Hello and welcome to the garden. Well, today I'm going to tackle what should be my final sowing of the year. I will be planting garlic and shallots later on, but as for regular seeds, this should be my last batch. That is if everything goes to plan. Unfortunately, I've got to re-sow quite a few from my previous batch, and I'll show you those a little bit later. But first of all, I've had a delivery, so I thought I'd take a look and see what's arrived. So this package has arrived from Seeds of Italy, and it should be shallots and garlic. Let's have a look. Wow, yeah. This is where I got my shallots from last year, and they were really fantastic. So hopefully, yeah, 2 bags of those. These are rock solid, lovely bulbs. I think perhaps not quite so uniform as they were last year, but still, I don't think there's going to be a single bulb rejected out of that lot. That's great. And then hopefully some French garlic. Yep. This did very well for me last year, and it was a horrible year. And although some of the top growth was pretty ugly, the bulbs themselves have been fantastic. Absolutely sound, beautiful flavour. What have I got in here? 3, 6. I've got about 8 bulbs, and the cloves on these are a really good size, so there won't be too much of that I'll have to discard. Some of those are fantastic. I will be ordering some more garlic. I will probably get that from the garlic farm, but that's not a bad start. So I'm very happy once again with the quality of the garlic and the shallots. I plan to get those in the ground towards the middle of October, hopefully. I've got to clear some space for them. The bed where they're going in has some old beetroot. We've been working our way through that. It's still very nice to eat, even though it's been there quite a long time. So we need to take all of that out. I can pack that away into the shed. It will keep for a while. There are also some old carrots there and some parsnips. Now the parsnips will be better later in the year, but I suspect I'm going to have to lift those. Well, we can take those while they're still young and leave the other bed of parsnips for the winter. That'll be fine. I'm not 100% sure. It depends how much space the shallots will take, but I would imagine I'm going to need a full bed for that lot. So back to the main business of the day, which is this final sowing. I want to put in some cabbage for next year. This is Wheeler's Imperial. I've got quite a lot of brassicas in the garden, but this is the last one. This is a nice pointy cabbage. Quite a versatile one, that. So I will sow a few of those. I don't need too many, maybe half a dozen plants at the most. Then I want some winter lettuce, probably as a cut and come again crop, and I think I will put this in the cold frames. Now I've just got 1 bag of mixed lettuce here. This is from Seeds of Italy. I've been sowing quite a bit of their spring summer mix, and that's been doing very well. So this contains varieties that are suitable for autumn and winter. Then some more rocket, and finally some lamb's lettuce. I've been waiting all year to sow this. This is ideal at this time of year and to go through winter. So it's the usual game here. I'll be sowing those into some cell trays, and I've got more of my fluffy peat-free compost. Although I really don't like the texture, it does seem to be doing reasonably well. I think it's got a tendency to cap over a little bit, but so long as you keep that surface moist, it doesn't seem to be performing too badly, even though the texture is truly horrid. Well, as usual, there's not a huge amount of room in here for filming, so you'll have to put up, I'm afraid, with a slightly poor shot there. So I'm just going to fill this loosely as usual, and then I'll pack it down a little bit. This fluffy stuff really does pack down quite a lot. What on earth is that? It's just rubbish. I pick out some of the larger bits. I mean, that's a piece of wood, and there's all sorts of fibrous junk in there. But I don't fuss over it too much. This is not like I need to prick any of this out. It's all going to go as plugs, so I don't really need the soil to be too fine. I'll just press that down. It's very spongy. So I'll begin with a tray of the corn salad. I'm just going to sow a small pinch in each cell. It'll probably be 3 or 4 seeds. Apart from the Wheeler's Imperial cabbage, everything today is going to be heading towards the cold frames or the polytunnel or the greenhouses. None of this will be growing outdoors. I'll just cover that, avoiding the worst of the junk. Because it's so fluffy, it does need to be pressed in a little bit. That's not too bad. I'll give that a water in a minute, and that'll be good to go. I really wish they'd take some of this junk out of it though. It really does look like it needs composting for another 6 months or so. I've got some larger cells here which I'm going to use later, but at the moment I'm using these 40 cell trays, and that should be great for these plants. Some of the larger brassicas I'll put in the larger cells. The little salad plants, they'll be absolutely fine in these. These are still quite a good size cell. There's a reasonable depth here, quite wide. So, a couple of trays, I think, of this mixed salad. Now, you never know exactly what's going to come up from this. And, of course, there'll be in a pinch of seed that I'll put in each cell. I'll aim for maybe 3 seeds, and hopefully I get some reasonable germination from that. But, of course, there'll be different types. But when I thin them out, I'll have the opportunity to pick whatever takes my fancy. Now what I ought to do is just get a section of 4 or 5 different lettuces that I actually like and sow those, but these mixtures are ever so convenient. Well, the problem with this stuff is that you can't sieve this any sense. I really wouldn't want to go through the sieve. It's got so much fibre in it. So it's very difficult to get rid of these horrid lumps. I certainly don't want to be using this where I need to prick seedlings out, because that just makes life a lot more difficult. It's not pretty, but it will probably do fine. So that's one tray of the lettuce, and I think I'll sow one more of those just to make sure I've got plenty of plants. I'm not sure how many I need, but I will probably fill all 4 cold frames with this, because as the weather cools down, this will stop growing to any significant degree, so it would be nice to have a reasonable quantity there to pick from. So now on to these larger cells, and I'll use those for the brassicas. So I think what I'll do is, how many plants do I need? I think I'll just sow 2 columns of the Wheeler's Imperial. That'll be 8 plants, and that'll give me 2 spares. I think I only really need 6, and the rest I will fill with rocket. Now the cabbage, of course, I will thin to just a single seedling, but the rocket, I may well just leave that with 2 or 3 plants per cell. It doesn't really matter too much. I'll see how it goes. Germination from this particular seed wasn't great last time, so I'll maybe put a few extras in. I can always thin them. It takes a moment. Oh, missed a column there. That's not very clever. I'll just give these a good soak. Of course, when the seedlings come up, you have to be quite careful with watering, but right now there's no harm in giving this stuff a really thorough soaking. And it does seem to absorb quite a lot of moisture, so I want to make sure those seeds get properly hydrated, of course. Otherwise germination is going to be a bit rubbish. Well, that's the new batch of seeds sown, but the previous seedlings, which until about a week ago were looking really great, unfortunately they are in a bit of a state now. Now, I did something to my back shortly after the last video, and I haven't been out here very much. I did pop out a couple of times to check on the seedlings, give them a drop of water, and the first time I came out, well, obviously a cabbage white had managed to get in there. They were loosely covered with mesh to keep them away, but they are persistent little blighters, and I don't remember ever seeing quite so many in the garden as this year. Well, one of them had obviously got in there and laid, and there were caterpillars all over them, and I went over them as carefully as I could and picked all the caterpillars off. And they were still quite small at that stage, so fairly easy to miss some. A couple of days later I came back, and sure enough there were a few more there. I think I've got them all now, but unfortunately they have eaten most of my seedlings. So these are looking fine. These are chicory, so the cabbage whites aren't interested in those. And this is what all the seedlings should be looking like. Not too bad. The brassicas, on the other hand, are a complete mess. I've already pulled the Napa cabbage out of the other tray there. They were planted alongside the Treviso chicory, and I don't know, 1 or 2 of these plants may survive, may grow out of this damage if I've managed to pick off all of the caterpillars. Now, I've had about 3 goes at it, and every time I seem to have missed a few. And it is possible that some of these plants will recover from this damage, but they are not looking good. I mean, 1 or 2 of these for sure I think are done, but I mean that one there, I'm pretty sure that one will develop okay. But they're not good, and I'm going to re-sow the entire lot, and hopefully the next lot I will keep free of caterpillars. So I've just had these seedlings sat in this old propagator tray. Obviously the propagator hasn't been in use since the spring. I had them loosely covered with mesh, but obviously not well enough. So I've added the sides back on the propagator, and I will clip this mesh to the sides all the way round, and hopefully that will keep these free of butterflies. So from today's sowings, the lamb's lettuce and the loose leaf lettuce, that's perfectly okay to leave uncovered, but the Wheeler's Imperial cabbage and the rocket, I'm going to get that in there and be a little bit more careful with how I cover it. I will move those trays out though, because there's every chance that there's one or two caterpillars left and they will take out the new seedlings before they have a chance to get going. I'm really not that hopeful of getting any decent plants out of the stuff that's been eaten, so I will re-sow that lot. I'm not going to film it because it's exactly the same as I did last time and pretty much the same as I've been doing today, so I'll just do that off camera. But anyway, that is my last sowing of the year, I think, provided they don't get eaten again. I will put in the shallots and garlic later in the year, sometime mid-October probably, but if not, then certainly by the end of October, and hopefully I can get some more garlic from the Isle of Wight. I want to get plenty of that in there this year. But anyway, that is all for this video. Thanks very much for watching, and bye for now.